channel. This is part 7 of Let's Get Cooking. Last time in part 6 we imported the meshes, we set up the data assets, we set up our trial blueprint of BPP appliances, and we set all of our collision boxes, our lever and everything in place. But as of the moment it does nothing. And today we're going to add functionality to our toaster so that we will be able to toast bread. So without further ado, let's get cracking. Okay, so here we have our toaster. Now, just for ease, we're going to quickly go into our game world, find a place you want it. I'm going to put it down here, surface. We're going to, never remember the name of it, but we're going to look for, it's under level prototyping, meshes, SM cube. I'm going to drag in a couple of cubes. I like to put my snapping to 100 for when I'm doing the cubes, because then it snaps on the grid. And I'm just going to duplicate that maybe 4 times. Gives ourselves a table. I'm going to select them all. And I'm going to undo that, and I'm just going to lower it a little bit because I think that's a little bit high. So we're going to have 0.8 the height. And I'm going to select one of the yellow because I like that yellow color. Find that. That's our world. Select our cubes again. I'm going to do yellow just so that it differentiates it. Okay, so our slice of bread we can now move over to here. Drop our snapping down to maybe 10 now. And bring it up. Pop the world, press end and it should get where you want it. Move it to where you want it. Okay. Now I'm just, because later on we're going to need to, so I'm just going to duplicate it. You see on here we have that handle that we added last time on the meshes. Don't worry, that's hidden in game. You will not see it. Once we're in modeling mode, we'll go back to specs mode. And what we're also going to do is we're going to drag in our, go to our game folder, our blueprints, our game items, appliances, and our toaster. We're going to drag in our toaster. Pop him on the table. Again, I like to press it in to make sure it's sat. I'm going to rotate it around 90 degrees so it's facing us. And here's our toaster. Now, if we play the game, excuse the delay for a second when I'm recording with 2 copies of 5.7 open. My PC struggled a little bit. Once it settles down, it's fine. So here we've got our looker because we set that up last time. We've still got that. So I'll remove that in a second. Use E to pick up. Now if I click E, nothing happens. If I click left mouse button, nothing happens. We've got no code. We can pick up our bread. We can drop it on our toaster. Ooh. Maybe our toaster needs to be a little bit further forward. We could drop it on our toaster, but nothing happens. Okay, so just for make it our life a bit easier, I'm going to drag this toaster just forward a tad. Fortunately, we can't really reach too far. If you want to allow your player to reach further in our character where we set that point, just move that out a bit further. Okay. But now you should see that if I try it again, pick up a bread, I can actually drop it on the toaster, but nothing happens. Okay? You see, nothing happens. So that's what we're now going to do today. Okay, I'm just going to bring up my reference here. Now this is going to be quite complex, maybe quite lengthy, but we're not going to stop this video until this is working. So bear with us and follow along. Again, if you have any questions once you've done this video, please don't hesitate to put them in the comments, join my Discord, ask the questions. So let's get something working nice and simple to start with. Okay, so we're going to go to our event graph, and this is to show you that how the hierarchy works. Okay, we go to our interfaces, go to our interact, double click our do something. Okay, now for this we're going to do a check, and the check is going to be if the toaster has anything in it. We're not going to allow the player to move the toaster if it has food in it, i.e. because it will be plugged into the wall, so therefore you shouldn't be able to move it. It also stops a lot of additional coding we'd need to put in because of the physics side. So it's a little bit of a workaround, but if you would like to be able to move stuff like the toaster later on with the items in it, let me know and I can do a video for that. So we're going to right click and we're going to say get attached actors. Okay, like this, and we're going to drag out here and get the length. I'm simply going to say, is this length greater than 0? And we're going to do it once. We're going to check if it has any attached actors, i.e. the bread. If the answer is no, if we say we want to stop the moving if it has any, we're going to set simulate physics on our basic mesh through so that we can make sure that we have physics working for the pickup. And then we're simply going to drag out of here and we're going to call pickup item. Remember, this is what we did, and its target should be, target is BPP base, what we did last time. Okay, and I believe that's all we need to do for that. So if we go ahead and play our game again, we'll get rid of that tracer. We go ahead and we can press E. For some reason that's not working. Okay, so it says an error trying to read the grab point component location here. Okay, in our set. Reason being is because in our toaster we have not set it. So we're going to go to our base, give data, which is empty. We're going to put, first of all, we're going to do it as default. We're going to drag in our base mesh and we're going to set it to both grab point and item. We're going to head and play again. Press E. Now you see we picked it up. And as I said last time, that's a bit above our eye level. We can't really see what's going on. And also, if you notice, it's now the wrong way round. So we can't really rotate. We don't have a rotation type mechanic in the game. So this is where we're going to sort this out. We can drop it wherever we want. Okay. So this is where the grab point that we put in earlier comes into play. So we're going to drag that in and we're going to put this to grab point. Like so. Compile it, click our viewport. We're going to click our grab point and we're going to move it up 20 units And also we're going to rotate it 180 degrees on the Z. I'm going to compile. We're going to play. Let me make this full screen for you. Now you see, you pick up our toaster. It's now at a more manageable height. It's the right way round. We can place it down on our table nice and gently. Everything's cushy. Okay. Still the left mouse button doesn't work. Okay, so before we go ahead, I'm just going to go into our chef, our tracer. I'm going to remove the debug on that. That's annoying. Okay, so that's part one done. That's the easy part. Okay. So let's go back to our event graph. We need to set a few things up in begin play. Now we're going to start using, I'm not sure whether we've used them before, but we're going to start using a variable type called a map. Now maps are very handy. We don't need to begin overlap. So now we can get a tick. They're very handy because what they allow us to do is have a unique key and a value set for that key. You can't duplicate the keys. You can't, unlike if you just do an add in an array, you could have the same key. You have 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, and then it, makes more problems for filtering it. This makes it nice and easy. So let's go ahead and make our first map. Go down to our variables. We're going to add, and we're going to call this slot map. The type is going to be a scene component, not capture, just a straight scene component. Then we go up to here, to our variable type on the right hand side, we choose map. And you see it now gives us a second option. We're going to choose Boolean. Okay. So what this does is it looks for the scene component, and we can then find out, or we can look for a scene component as a key. We can find out whether this Boolean is true or false. What this is basically do is tell us whether this is the one that's going to designate whether we have bread in a slot or not. But we need to make this array to start off with, rather than we don't need to do it dynamically. There's only 2 and they will never change. If it's something that changes, you would need to make it dynamically. So first of all, let's go to our begin play. This says that we're going to simulate physics on our base mesh. I know we do it a lot, but we want to, because it's all physics based, we want to make sure we're working okay. In some objects, we will turn this off, like if we want something to stack, or else you're going to get a jiggling effect. But in this case, we don't mind. Okay, so we're now going to drag in our slot map. We're going to set it. Doing that to here. The input of this, we're going to choose, go down, look for map, make map. And we're going to add a second key. So we're going to drag slot 1 to key 1. And we're going to drag slot 2 to key 2. We're looking at the slot, not the slot box. We're trying to drag the slot box on it. It will add it. Yeah? But that's not what we want. We want the actual slot itself. Okay? And we're also going to drag in here. So we're going to drag in our slot box 1 and our slot box 2. And we're going to say set collision enabled. We're going to disable both of these. You can connect them both. We're going to set it to no collision. So that's our begin play. Okay. We're going to comment as we go along in this series. So we're going to type in begin play. And I like to click the show bubble so that when we zoom right out and it's small, we still see what it is. So it helps us find this when we get a lot of code. Let's comment on this one. To highlight it, press all. Comment is going to be do something. Again, I like to show bubble. Okay, so that's those two done. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and we're going to make a few functions to help us along the way. Let me see which one we're going to. Yes. Okay, so we're going to start with making a couple of helper functions. So we're going to go to our functions. We're going to add a new function. I'm going to say find empty slot. I'm going to go ahead and make that a pure function because we're not setting anything, we're just looking for data. Now the good thing about that, we're now going to drag in our slot map here that we made just now. The good thing about this is we can for each through. If for some reason your version of Unreal 5 doesn't have it, I'm not sure. I know it has this in 5.6, but I'm not sure about earlier versions. Definitely got it in 5.7. If it doesn't do that and you're struggling with it, let me know. But there are ways around it if you don't have the for each loop, and it works just the same way. So we're going to for each loop. So if we look here, we have map key, map value, and if we actually expand it, we can have a for each loop with a break. So what we're going to do is we are going to add a branch. We're going to go to the map value. Okay. So basically we're saying, we're looking at this map value, is this true or false? So if it's true, it means it's got something in it. If it's false, it means it's empty. And we basically are going to come up to false. We're going to add a return node. Now, in that return node, we're going to add an output. It's going to be called slot_ref. And that's going to also be a scene component. That's what we're using. And we're also going to add another one, and we're going to call it found. And that's going to be a Boolean, like so. So if this is false, it means we have an empty slot. So we check found, and we're going to bring this down. All I'm doing is dragging down, keeping my left mouse button down, pressing R to get a reroute node. If you didn't know, that's a shortcut. And doing it to slot ref. Now by putting a return node in a loop, it stops the loop there and it returns out, so you don't have to go through any iterations. Remember, we only care about the first one it finds. So if slot 1 is, so it'll be index 0, which is slot 1. If that is not empty, it will then look for slot 2. Then we're going to copy and paste this return node. We're going to uncheck found, and we're going to put it on the completed. So it gets through here, and none of this is found, and we don't have an empty slot. Okay, that's the first one. Okay, now this one is a little bit complex, and what this one does is helps us position the bread. So if you saw when we did our quick test here, that bread is horizontal, our slots are vertical. Okay, so if I drop it on there, it's horizontal. What we need to do is orientate the bread in the right way and move it into the slot. Okay, when we drop it, if there's an empty slot. So this next function handles the positioning of that. So we are going to make yet another new function. And we're going to call this get slot data. Now this is not a pure function because we are setting variables. Naturally, what we're going to do is get into the habit. Let's put these under a heading. And we're going to do the same with this one. We'll put this under a heading. Once you've added it, it's there in the list, so it makes it easier. Okay, so first of all, we need to know where the slot is. So we're going to make a new variable. And we're going to call this empty slot. Okay, so empty slot is a single item, okay? Single component item. We're going to drag that in. If you can't find it in your variables list, well, oh my God, where's it gone? Because single component is a component, look in the components list and you'll find it there. That's caught me out a few times in the past. So we're going to drag that in. We want to know where it is in the world. So quite simple, we get world location. Okay, this is the simple part. We know where this slot is in the world. We know it's in XYZ position. We're simply going to promote that to a variable, not a local variable, a variable, and we're going to call it slot location. Now here comes the difficult part. We need to know what orientation, what rotation our slot is. There's quite a few different ways of doing it, but this way worked for me. I'm just going to duplicate our slot location, and we're going to call it slot rotation. And we're going to change it from a vector to a rotator, the purple one, and drag it in, pop it there. Now we need to set this. Okay, so again, we're going to use our empty slot, so we're going to drag that in. Now, we have 3 vectors from our empty slot, so we're going to say get up vector, get forward vector, and get right vector. Now, because our bread is set up in a specific way, this is why this works. Okay, so if you haven't got your bread set up in a different way, you're going to have to try and figure it out yourself, or set your bread up the same way as mine. Then we're going to drag off of here and we're going to say make rotation from axis, this one at the bottom here. Okay, big scary node. Okay, so from the get right vector, we're going to plug it into that up, because we're basically twisting and turning our slice of bread. Okay, so don't just blindly put right to right, up to up, forward to forward, because you will end up in all sorts of a mess. From our up vector, we're going to add a multiply. We're going to right click on our pin here, and we're going to choose to float. We're going to multiply it by -1. And usually you don't know, if you multiply something by -1, it inverts it. So if this is 1, it becomes -1. If it's 2, it becomes -2. Okay? Or if it's -1, it becomes 1. So it inverts it. The up vector is going to go to our forward vector. Copy, paste that again. And we've only got one space left, and that goes to our right. Okay? And that's that function done. The next function we'll do those as we go along, I believe. No. The next function we're going to do, we'll do one more function and then we'll get on to the nitty gritty. So again, we're going to add another function. I'm going to say move bread. Again, name whatever you chose. I chose these names so that they're a little bit descriptive and they maybe help us along a bit. This needs an input and we're going to call it alpha. This is really just as a helper function. This is just to stop things getting all a bit complicated later on with lines going everywhere, and it just makes it a bit easier. Everything you see in here will be wrapped up into a nice, neat function. We're going to need to add a new variable. To our variables, we add a new variable, and we're going to call it dropped bread. And this is going to be of type BP underscore, and what did we call it? Bread. BP underscore bread. Okay. So you compile. We're going to drag and add drop bread. We're going to get it. We're not going to check if it's valid. It's not valid. No point doing anything. We're not going to be able to move it. So it's not valid. Okay. Now we are then going to drag out of here. We're going to say set actor location and rotation. Remember, we're rotating it as well as moving its location. We're going to drag from here, and we're going to use alert to look for alert vector. We're going to drag up our rotator, and we're also going to use alert rotator. Okay. So there's a little bit of room here. We need to know what our rotation and location of our slice of bread is to start with. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is, before we forget, and it doesn't work, we're going to connect that to that. Okay, move these down and stay down. Angle. How do we root node to make it a bit neater? Make sure you add your drop bread to target, because that's the actor we want to move. Also from here, we're going to say get actor transform. Okay, we're going to right click on the orange pin, split the pin. We're going to put the location to the A of the alert vector, and rotation to the A of the alert rotator. The slot rotation that we made earlier is going to go to there, and the slot location is going to go to the B of the alert vector. Remember, in the last function we made get slot data, that's what we're going to do. Now we've got left is alpha. If we right click and say get alpha, that will get the input variable, and you can feed that into both of those, neaten it up the best way you can. It's not easy sometimes. Do it so that it doesn't look too muddled. Okay. And there we go. That's all we need to do for this. This is not a pure function. It needs to be executed. Okay, so we will keep it like that. Compile. Save. Make sure everything's saved. Save. Save and compile, yes. Okay, so we have that all saved. Okay, next thing, we're going to go to our event graph. And we are going to start to make some new functions. So first thing we want to know is, has a piece of bread been dropped onto our toaster? Okay. If we go to our components list here, we look for our box, right click it, add event, on add on component begin overlap. We want that one. Okay. And we're going to now be using some of the functions we've just made. So the first one we're going to do is find empty slot. Okay. I'm going to do a branch. First thing we're going to do. Okay. If it's false, later on we're probably going to add a message to it, but for now we're not going to do anything. We're interested in the true. Okay. Now we made that variable which is in the components called empty slot. We're going to on the true set that, and that's going to be that slot reference there. Okay. We are then going to drag in our dropped bread. Again, we're just going to validate and check to make sure it is valid. If it's not valid, there's no point going ahead with the rest of the code. You'll just get errors. So let's stop it now before we get errors. Okay. Now, at the moment, we haven't set this. Okay. I don't know what this is. So we're just making sure that we don't have a valid dropped bread. So in this case, we're worried about, we're not worried about if it's valid. If it's valid, then something should already be happening with it. If it's not valid, then we need to act on it. Okay, so the first thing we do then is we get the item mesh of our toaster, base mesh, and we set simulate physics to off. Okay, and this we're going to connect to the. Now, the reason for this is because they're both physics objects. If we drop a physics object on another one, it will do some strange things. There are settings that we could adjust to reduce that, but it will do strange things like things go flying all over in the air. So this just stops that happening. Okay, so we made a map. We're now going to make another map. So back to our variables, we're going to add a variable. We're going to call this, for want of a better word, bread map. Okay. And the type is going to be BP map, BP bread, but it's going to be a map. And the second one is going to be scene component. So basically, this is going to be used to know what slot a particular actor, bread actor, is in. Okay. So we're going to drag that in. First of all, we're going to see whether this is longer than 2. So we get the length. We're going to say, is this less than 2? Because if it's less than 2, it means that there are empty slots. Yes, we've checked it here and here, but this is just another catch. I found it worked better with it. We're just double checking, just in case for some reason your bread bounces or does something strange. This does a double check because this map hasn't been set anywhere as yet. We're going to do, oops, we're going to do a branch off of that. So if this is less than 2, we can go ahead. So now we're going to get the other actor. Drag it all the way over here. So let's add some reroute nodes. Remember, hold your left down. R. Then we are going to cast to BP bread, because we need to know specific values from that particular one. Yeah, we could probably do this with interfaces, but it's a one-off cast. It's not a heavy cast. These actors are going to be attached to the toaster, so it's not going to make any difference in this case. Okay, so first what we want to do is check, has this been dropped? Okay, so we drag up there and say has been dropped. The reason we want to know this is because if you've got it in your hand and you just happen to accidentally touch the collision box, or maybe your collision box is quite high, or your toaster is high up, or whatever scenario that you actually touch it but you still got it in your hand, you don't want to be running the code, because it will cause problems because it's still attached to you as a player, so therefore you don't want to, you're going to have strange things happening. So we want to know, have you actually let go of it and dropped it? And if you remember in our drop item from last time, or time before last, it actually sets this as dropped. If that's true, then going to drag out of here, do a couple of reroute nodes. We're going to drag in our dropped bread. Sorry, I couldn't find it there for a second. We're going to set that. Okay. So that's all we're going to do now. We're going to say, right, we've detected the bread. We have slots available here. We've set our empty slot. We've double checked that we don't already have a valid bread that's in motion. We've taken off the physics for our toaster so that it doesn't do crazy things. We've double checked that both slots are, at least one slot is empty. We've cast to our bread actor. We're checking, has it been dropped? If it has been dropped, I'm going to say set this out. Okay. Let's put a comment around this. I'm going to call this detect drop. And again, okay. So the next thing we know we've got a valid bread actor. We want to be able to act on it. Now the best way I found this is to do this part on tick, but it's all we're using tick for is to check something continuously, and if that becomes true, we're going to fire off the event once. Okay, so we're going to get our tick. First thing we'll do is get our dropped bread actor. And we're going to validate it. So if this is not valid, nothing is happening in tick. It's not taking up any system resources. It's just sitting there quite happy. If it's valid, we're going to do something called a do once. Now, if you're not familiar with a do once, it does exactly what it says on the tin. It will only fire once. You can keep telling it to fire, 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 but until it's been reset, it will only fire once. Let's deal with a reset. You can drag off of here, make a custom event. If I can spell, add a custom event. I'm just going to call it, because we've only got the one in here, we can get away with this. Reset do once. Okay. So when we call this, it will reset this and allow this to continue. Okay. Then we're going to make another custom event. We're going to drag down here to give ourselves some space. We're going to make a custom event down here. And we're going to call this put, I'll zoom in a moment, bread in toaster. Put bread in toaster. Let's put spaces in that, make it readable. Bread in toaster. That's exactly what it says on the tin. My favorite expression. I'm sorry I keep saying that. Then we're going to go ahead and call it, so you can just drag off the completed and say put bread in toaster. So we're going to call that event. So what happens here is every tick is checking if we've got a valid bread actor. As soon as we've got a valid bread actor, it's going to fire this off once, and it's going to fire off this custom event that we just made. Once the event is fired off, we can reset the do once, so it stops this continually happening. If we didn't do this, and we're putting the bread in the toaster, which is doing the moving of the bread is just going to keep continuously moving and doing nothing. So that's what we need to do on tick. So let's do a comment on that. The only reason I do this is because there's quite a lot in here, so this just helps us zoom in and out. Okay, so let's go to the put bread in toaster. Okay, first thing we'll do is going to drag in our dropped bread. We're going to drag off of here, and remember the time before last, we did set mesh physics. From BPP base, so there. Okay, we did it on the BPP base, so we can do it on there. Make sure we choose a base one. Turning off the physics on the bread. Okay, because we don't want physics happening while the bread's moving. Okay. Then we're going to drag in our function that we made called get slot data. So that finds from the empty slot, which we set in this one here, where that slot is in the world and what its location is. Okay, so now we're going to right click here and we're going to say add timeline. And it's the bottom one, not the timeline component. Okay, we're going to call this move bread to position. Okay, drag that up. We're going to use play from start, not just play from start. The reason I'm saying that is because we're partway through, for some reason this gets disturbed, we'll reset, it'll only continue from where it was last played. Play from start starts it back from the beginning. Double click that to open it up. First thing we can do is chop our length down to 1.5. Okay. We're going to add a track. We're going to add a float track, and we're going to call it alpha. We're going to hold down shift, and we're going to click 2 times on the line here. 2 points. We're going to click on that first point, make sure it's 0. Press enter, or else it won't actually set your variable. Click on the second point. We say 1.5, enter or tab to move to the next one, and then this is going to be 1, enter. You can then click these 2 arrows to see the whole graph. What I like to do, just to make it a little bit smoother, is I highlight both of them to make sure they're both blue. I click on auto. It gives a nice curve rather than just a linear one. Up to you. If you prefer a linear straight thing, then that's fine, but if you want it to sort of slowly start, speed up, and then whatever. How I prefer it, that's how I do it. Okay, so once we've done that, we can close that. Make sure you keep compiling, keep saving. That's our event graph. Now you see that that output is here. We made our function move bread, so we're going to drag that in. Update goes to there, and alpha goes to there. Now basically what update is, as the timeline moves along the timeline, it sends out a value, which will be on this alpha. And while it's updating, it's going to keep calling this. So this alpha value will keep changing, which will then change the relative position between its start and end location along this alpha. Okay. So we've done that. Now we're going to drag off of finished, and we're going to say attach actor to component. A big note this one. The target is going to be our dropped bread. Down here somewhere. The component is going to be our empty slot, the parent. Okay. Now this part is quite important. Okay. Location rule, we're going to say snap to target. Okay. Rotation rule, we can say keep world. If we snap to target to that, it will just basically undo what our timeline's just done. Scale rule, snap to target. Okay. That should be fine. Now we drag in our slot map that we made right at the beginning of the video, and we click add. So to change anything inside a map, if you don't know, we add it. And because they're unique keys, if we add the same key, it will just overwrite what's already there and change it. Okay, so the key we're going to change is our empty slot, and we're going to say true. Okay, so this slot, whatever this empty slot was, so it was slot 1, now becomes not empty. Then we're going to drag in our bread map, and we're going to do an add again. Join that together. And dropped bread is going to be the first one. This one's a little bit difficult because they're both the same colour, so it makes it a little bit harder to know what to put there. But they shouldn't connect. And then we're going to drag in our empty slot and connect it. So if I try and connect that to the AC, it doesn't want to do it. So can't really get it wrong. That empty slot here. Then we're going to drag in our empty slot again, and we're going to set that to a null value. We're going to drag in our dropped bread and also set that to a null value. So we're unvalidating these items. And then we're going to call reset to compile. Let's comment that. Oh. And we're going to say, let's say put bread in toaster. Again, I like to show the bubble. Up to you whether you do that. Also, you can change colours and do all sorts, so play around, get it to how you prefer it. Okay, so we've got this far. Let's give it a quick test. Let's see if it works. So let's hit play. We're going to wander down to our little table. I'm going to move that player starting moment just to make life easier. Pick up some bread. We're going to drop it on our toast. Let's see what happens. Boom. Okay, you see it nicely moved it into the slot nice and efficiently. Let's try the second one, see if it puts it in the second slot. And it puts it in the second slot. Okay. Now if I take this one out, it won't now put it back in. because we've now got 2 items in our bread map, so therefore not allowing another slice of bread to be put in until we've cleared that. And that's what we're going to do next. We're going to, first of all, we're going to do the toasting side of it. We're going to be able to lower the lever, lower our bread, and then we're going to do the clearing the slots once we remove our bread. So let's get to that now. Okay, so let's get to move the bread, which is relatively simple. Okay, so because we're using our interact and it's all part of our hierarchy system, in our interfaces, if we scroll down to interact, we've got event left click. We're going to double click that. Okay, so let's consider what we need to do in real world when we want to lower a toaster. All toasters that I know of in the modern day age, especially safety, you cannot lower the toaster if there's no bread in it. So that's check 1. Is there any bread in it? Okay. Now, for the sake of the game, rather than reality, we're going to say that if your bread is already cooked, you can't lower it with a cooked piece of bread in it, because it's just going to complicate things further down the line. Like I say, we're not going for ultra realism, we're going for an effect that does look fairly realistic. Okay, so obviously if there is already cooked bread in there, we're going to say no, you can't lower me. And the third consideration we're going to look at, if the toaster's already down, we don't want to be able to spam, or the player to spam the button, so it keep going up and down, up and down, up and down, and potentially break the mechanic or look wrong on screen. So these are the 3 checks we're going to do. How do we do that? Quite simply. So let's first of all make another function to help us. Okay, so we're going to go to our functions. I don't think we've made it yet. No, we haven't. In our functions, we're going to say check if slots have cooked toast. Cooked bread. It's difficult to know the correct English on that one. I would imagine cooked bread or just has toast, but yeah, this is what we're going to go with. Going to make this pure. Okay, going to have one output, and we're going to say has cooked and it's going to be a bool. I'm just going to break that just for a second. Now we're going to drag in our bread map that we made earlier. We're going to for each through that. Okay, we're going to drag out from here and say has been. Okay, we don't have has been cooked because I believe I added that. Let me just double check. Yes. Okay, I added that to our parent blueprint, and I forgot to do it. So we go to our BPP parents, open it up. We can duplicate that has been dropped and just call it has been cooked. This will be used later on in a lot of things. Make sure you compile that, close that, back to our toaster, compile that, map to it has been cooked. There we go, we've got it here. Okay. And we simply get a branch. true. We click it as true. Copy and paste the return node and completed. We click false. Because remember, as I said to you before, you're going to a for each loop and you've got a return node. If it hits that return node, it takes it straight out the for each loop. Okay? No need to go to break and all this. It does the same thing. And if it's false, it's not going to do anything. It's not going to change that. So it's going to go to the next loop. And if it gets to the end, and this hasn't obviously been triggered, then we're going to show false. So it's a pure function. Okay, so let's go back to our event graph. Okay. We are going to first of all drag in our bread map. And we're going to say, get our length. And this time we want to know if this has something in it. So we're going to say, is this greater than 0? In other words, it has some items in it. We drag off here and do and boolean. We're going to add a third pin. We are going to add a new function. Sorry, a new variable. My apologies, new variable. And we're going to call it toaster down. Goodness me, down. Okay, and that will be of type boolean, single boolean. Okay. Okay, we're going to drag that in. Now, obviously, with an and boolean, or not obviously if you don't know, all of these have got to be true for this to fire off on a branch. True. If any one of these is false, this will return false. Okay. So all three scenarios have got to be true. Now, toaster down is the opposite, yeah, for what we want. So we're only going to set the toaster down when it's down, but we've already said we want to know, well, we don't want to be able to put the toaster down if it's already down. So how are we going to deal with that? Well, we simply invert it. So we say not. You look for not boolean. Basically, if this is false, this will return true. If this is true, it will return false. Okay, so it's basically just inverts it. Yeah? And then we're going to bring in our little helper function we just made, which I didn't put in our toaster category, so we're going to do that. Drag that in, and again, this needs to have be inverted. So we use not. So if this fires out saying, yes, I've got cooked food, yeah, then that would be true. We don't want it true, we want it false. Okay. So we're going to invert that. So now we've done these three checks, we should be able to go ahead and lower our toaster. And the first thing we're going to do is say, okay, we'll pass these three checks. We're going to get our toaster down, and we're going to click the toaster is now down. So now if a player spams the button again, it will fail on this one. Okay, we're going to add another timeline. So add timeline. And we're going to call this lower toaster. Again, we're going to do play from start. Double click it. Set the length to 1.5. If you leave this length long, basically it will finish, but then you'll get like a delay. You can just click this button, use last keyframe, not worry about the length, but I prefer to set the length. Again, we're going to do a float track, and we're going to call it alpha, just like we did last time. And in fact, we're actually going to do exactly the same as last time. So we're going to add 2 points. First one going to be 0, 0. Second one going to be 1.5 and 0. Oh, sorry, 1. 1.5 and 1. And we're going to select both. And again, I prefer to have it easing in and easing out. Compile, close that. Oh, back to the event graph. Okay, so now we've got our alpha track. Now, what we're going to do here is we are, in effect, we're going to move the lever up and down. Okay. Remember earlier on, earlier on, I set this to 16 for the arc, and I worked out that 4 is our bottom position. Okay, so that's what the numbers we're going to work with. If you're using a different mesh, you have to figure out what those numbers are just by moving it up and down. Yeah. So quite simply, we're going to drag our lever in, and this time we're going to say set relative. Make sure you use relative location. We only care about location. We're not rotating it. We're not doing anything strange. We're just setting its location. I'm going to use alert because alert does it over time. We're going to alert our vector, and because this is a one-off thing, it's not going to change. You know, this is one of the few times you can hard, you know, it's acceptable to hard code something. Okay, this is very specific to this one actor, and it's never going to change. So we can hard code it. Okay, we only care about the Z. We're not going to move anything in the the X or the Y. But what you do have to take in mind, again, depending on your mesh, with this mesh it's fine, but depending on your mesh, when you select your lever, if these are different, so for example, if this was X2 and Y6, then you need to add these to it because you don't want those positions to change, okay? But in my case, for 0, 0, the only thing we're changing is the Z. Okay, so it may vary depending on the mesh that you are using. So we're going to go from where it is now, which is A, which is 16, where we want it to be, and I already calculated it down to 4. So over time, it's going to move that lever down. So now what we're going to do is we are going to add some sounds. So let's go back to our core folder, go to our FX folder, make a new folder. We're going to call this SFX for sound effects. We're going to import from the current folder. Now in the YouTube assets, or I think I've called it cooking assets, which you will download, you will see a folder in there. Download toaster down, upwave. I made these myself, but you can get them online. I literally played with my toaster until I got the sound that I wanted, and ate a lot of toast that day. So save everything, and we've got our sounds. So if you think about when a toaster helps you get that click sound when you when you click it down to the bottom and it locks in place. So we're going to drag in our audio component. We're going to say set sound. Put that off for finished. We're going to choose our taste it down sound. Drag this down a little bit, and then we're going to play that sound. Okay. So fire and forget. Which is another reason why we don't want this to keep restarting itself and we're blocking it at the beginning, because if the player spams it, you're going to get an awful sound. Okay, so we've done that. Basically, our toaster will go down. So let's test that, shall we? Now, if I try to play it now, come on, wake up. Remember, we put a blockage in to say we can't put this down. So if I go up to here, click left button, nothing happens. Again, we could put a message to tell the player can't load it without toast. Let's get a slice of bread in it. Drop it on it. Our bread goes to our slot. And for some reason, it is not working. Okay, normally I would pause the video, but let's have a look at see if we can work this one out ourselves. Why is it not working? What have I done wrong? Have I not called it? Maybe I've not called it. Yeah, I have called it. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is do a click on here, double breakpoint. Okay, let's just show you how I would debug something not working. Let's play it. If it becomes too long, I will pause it and work it out. So if I click here, now it's not being fired off. Why is it not being fired off? Because we've not called it on the player. Okay. Rookie mistake, I'm sorry about that. So we're going to go to open up our BP Chef. If it's not already open for you, open it up in your characters folder. Go to our event graph. Find where we've got all of our interacts. Right click and just say IA underscore left click. Okay. And I'm sorry, I'm just double checking what I've done on the left. Okay, so on our left click, pretty well how we did the other one. We're going to get our item in hand, validate that. We're going to do it off the started, not the triggered. If that is valid, we're going to say left click, event left click message. We've got this value here. I'm going to check it because later on we will use that, but in this particular instance we're not. If it's not valid, we're going to get our hit actor. Again, we're going to validate it. And we're going to do the same thing. So you can control paste that. And if it's not valid, we don't do anything because obviously we're not pointing at anything, or we don't have anything in our hand. Okay, so rookie mistake over, I believe. Let's remove the breakpoint. Let's go ahead and try it again. So left click, nothing happens, which is correct. Drop our bread on our toaster, in it goes, left click, and there we see our bread goes down. Dunk, we hear the noise. But nothing happens now. So let's think in reality what happens next is after a period of time, your toast pops up and you can remove it and eat your toast. So let's do that part now. So what's the best way of doing this? Well, we could do another timeline. We could set it and then on finish does something. But there's a more efficient way of doing that. We can drag off of the play here. This is from our event, left click, so we've lowered our toaster. Drag off the play here and we're going to say set timer by event. Now, up to you. I'm not going to do it this way, but what you could do is get your red map and then type in get value by index. We get the first index, which will be the first one in there. So whether you've got 1 or 2 in there, it doesn't matter. We get this and we say, you could then say get DA underscore. Okay. No, maybe you can't do it that way because we haven't exposed it. We then have to cast to it and stuff like that, which is silly. So let's just set it here. Again, it's a specific to this one. We don't need to be too much. So in our time, I'm going to say 5 seconds. We don't want it looping. We don't want to keep doing this. But if I try and compile it now, it's going to scream at me. Oh no, it hasn't. Normally it does. And we haven't got an event, but we can drag off the event, and we're going to click on it to the event dispatches. We're going to create an event, and we're going to create a matching event, and we're going to call this pop up toaster. Pop up toaster. Better. So the way a timer works is every time it hits whatever time we put in here, it fires this event. So, this is often used in things like survival games for health bars, to remove health bars, crafting timers. So they're very useful. Every time it hits, if you've got it on looping, every 5 seconds it will do the same thing. We actually only have one time event. Okay, so we're going to go down to now. We've finished this event, so let's go ahead and comment this. Say this. Lower bread. We're nearly done, guys. Okay, so pop-up toaster. So first of all, we're going to drag in our bread map. We're going to for each through that. And on the key, should say as DA underscore ingredients. Okay, we don't have that. Did I not put it in? Okay, so let's go back to our. I thought we'd already done this, but maybe not. Go back to our blueprints folder, our parent blueprint folder, and ingredients. No, I didn't do it. Okay. So what we're going to do is we are going to drag in our. So I've got the correct. Continue correct. Okay, so from here, we're going to say cast to DA underscore ingredients. Time cast. We've already got our data asset here. Compile that. And we're just going to convert that to a variable and leave it as the default name. Okay, now we can get our information. So we could say get DA, get as DA ingredients here. Then we're going from here, we're going to say get our cooked data asset. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a couple of revamp notes here, here. I always delete them if I don't use them. So we're going to get our, and from here, I'm going to say set data asset. We're changing the data asset inside our item, and we're going to set it to this one. Okay. Then we are going to, from here, we're going to get the, I think it's called base mesh, and we're going to set static mesh. And from here, we're going to get static mesh, join it into here. I'll explain what this does in a moment. And then out here, we're going to say has been cooked. Oops, don't get set. Set has been cooked to yes, because we now have toast, not bread. Okay. So let me just run you through what this does. So from our bread map, which is a map of all the bread actors that are in our toaster, we're getting the ingredients, the DA ingredients specifically, because we need to know that rather than the base ingredients. We're getting the cooked data asset, which we set up in our BP bread in the last video, or last video but one, depending on how I split this video up. We're setting the data asset to be this new asset. We're taking its static mesh and we're setting the static mesh on that actor to be our toast mesh. Now, if you are lucky enough, like I said to you in the first one about the toaster, that your meshes, you can just change the material. Instead of changing static mesh, you would have to change your way a little bit and change the material. But either way works. Okay. And as before, when our toaster pops up, it makes that popping up sound. So we're going to grab our audio component. We're going to set the sound. And the sound is going to be from our FX folder, and it's the toaster up sound. Okay. And then just like we did before with the down, we're going to play the sound. And then we're going to actually pop up the toaster. So we're going to drag our lever in. And we're going to say set relative location. Now when a toaster pops up, it does it very quickly. You could go ahead and do a timeline like we did before, but make it short. But I figured it works just as well just to do an immediate move, so it's instantaneous. So we're going to set that to 16. Why 16? Remember, that's the up position for me for that. Okay, so again, if you use different mesh, you may have to change these. So now we've done that, we still have those meshes attached, so we need to detach them. So I'm going to make up a quick function to help us with that. We're going to add a new function. We're going to say detach toast from toaster. It just makes it cleaner that you detach the actors rather than, so when you try and pick them up, there's no conflicts of any sort. So, you know, this is makes sure everything's done correctly. We're going to open that up, and this is a relatively simple function. So like we did right before, get actors, get attached actors. Make sure you check recursively include attached actors. I found that makes a little bit of a difference. We're going to drag this out and we're going to promote this to a local variable. L attached actors. If we don't do this, you'd have to run this thing twice, because basically every time you fire it, every time it tries to loop through them, this will fire off, and then it just doesn't work. You'll only end up detaching one of them. But by putting it into a variable, you're running it off the variable, and that's it. This only gets fired once. So we do it for each loop, and we're simply going to say detach from actor, and we're just going to use keep world for all of these. Okay, we don't want it to move anywhere else, we want it to keep world. Compile that back to our event graph. We can then go to our events. Also, yeah, let's just make sure we put that in there. Okay, so we drag in that function like so. Then we have to then find our toaster down variable. Toaster now is no longer down, so that is false. And we get our slot box 1, slot box 2, and we say set collision enabled. Make sure you join both of them up. And we're going to say query only, no physics. Okay. Because we're only using it as a query based item. So that is our pop up our toaster. So let's comment that. Pop up toast. Okay. And we're almost done, so we're going to go ahead and do the last bit. Now, I will show you why we're going to do the next bit in a minute, because it'll help you understand it a little bit more. So we'll go ahead and play it. Let's say we put in our bread. Let's test it and toast it. Let's just put in 1. And let's take it out. And you can see now, if I put it with that one, we do have a toasted bread rather than a plain bread. Okay. If I now go to here and put in the second bread, see this goes to slot 2, not slot 1, even though slot 1 is empty. And then if I take it out again, it don't have any slots. So we need to clear those slots when we take the bread out. And this is why we're doing this last little bit of code. Okay. This is where these slot boxes come into. So slot box 1, add event, we could say on component end overlap. We could do the same for slot box 2, end overlap, not begin, end. Okay. This is quite simple. We need to actually cast to our correct actor so that it is actually doing the correct thing and getting the correct name of that actor. So we're going to cast the bread from our other actor. We're going to drag in our bread map. We're going to drag in our slot map. Okay. We're going to drag out of here. We're going to say find. We want to find this actor that's just overlapped. Because it's a type bread, that's why we had to cast. We could, again, like I say, make up interfaces, but for this, it's not a big problem. It's a one shot. We're not storing it, and it's not heavy. And if that is found, we could do a double check here, but it should find it. We're going to click add from our slot map on here, from the execution here. We're going to join in this one, and we're going to set that to 0, which means that slot is now empty. Then we're going to get the bed map, and we're going to remove let me reroute this. We're going to remove this from here. Okay. That now takes that out of the slot. It clears it out of the bed map, and it sets this slot to now empty. You can copy and paste all of this, exactly the same for both. Because this actor reference will come from here, and that is it. And we're going to comment that. We'll say end overlap. End overlap events is good enough. So let's go ahead and now test that. If I drop the bread in here like we did before, we'll do exactly the same as we did before. Check that our toast is working, which it is. You hear the sound. Click that. Let's remove that toast. Pop it down there. Move it into here. Pop it in here. That goes to slot 1. That goes to slot 2. It allows us to put toasted bread in. But hey, because it's toasted, it's not allowing us to drop it. So let's remove that one. And our toaster allows us to toast. So it does everything that we wanted it to do. And again, you can pick up our toaster. Here's that toast, okay? But it shouldn't allow us to drop it. But we've got 2 slots that are now empty. If I drop that again, it'll go to 1. It works perfectly. Okay, thank you very much. We're going to end it here. Like I say, I might split this video into 2. Let's see how long they are. I think it's gone on a long time. There's quite a lot of work there. Any questions, please don't hesitate to put them in the comments. If you need help, I'm here. I'll give you as much help as I possibly can. Join my Discord for more help. If you like my videos, please subscribe. Click that like button. It all helps the channel. If you don't like it, click it. But if you do dislike it, tell me why. If you think I can improve on sound or anything in my videos, send me a comment. But you know, be courteous. You don't like to have abusive comments. I do try and keep this relatively family orientated. And if you really like my work, consider buying me a coffee or joining my Patreon. If you join my Patreon, you will get extra things, like I'm considering making the whole series one long video, so you can have that as one long video, giving you project files, so on and so forth, depending on the tier that you join. And I'll see you in the next one. The next one, I think we're going to make another appliance. We're either going to make another appliance, or we are going to actually make some more ingredients, and let's stick some butter and jam on our bread or our toast. Maybe we can do that. I'll have a think. Okay, see you in the next one. Bye.